G'day guys, welcome back. Episode 64, Money in the Tank. Good to see you fellow tankers out there. And today joining us for our budget special. So we're recording this on a Thursday, so second day after the budget.
Second day after, yep.
We were meant to get on yesterday, but things got in the way. But
Life.
we're here and we're bringing you budget special mania. It's all happening. Although actually the budget was nothing too crazy in the budget, but some good things to know. So we're going to cover that off for you guys today. Plus a great Rivkin's rules and a 50-50 to finish off the episode. And it's going to be a short and sharp one. So stay with us, buckle in, and we look forward to taking you guys through it today. But without further ado, my name's Joel Seach, Principal Advisor, Harpel FG.
Bang, and there's only one person below you today. So Brad Tabone, investor and journalist.
And you're on the side on my screen, so there you go. Zoom wreaking havoc, and we'll say good day to Arnie virtually, mate. Hopefully you're all good, mate. You've had a busy week too, so it's all happening, mate. It's all happening, and I'm taking.
And you're off to Singers, mate, at the end of the week.
Mate, Thailand, Singapore. So looking forward to that. Definitely need a break and a breather. So looking forward to getting over there. If I can try to jump on with you lads and from a beach somewhere, I'll definitely jump on for a recording.
You got to do it.
Jump in and be the Brad of the group for once.
Me.
So Brad, summary of the budget, mate. What did you take away from it as a general?
Before we jump into the budget, we have to do Rivkins.
Mate, and where can they find us at, Brad?
They can find us everywhere, Joel.
Find us
everywhere, Joel. Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, your favorite podcast plays. But YouTube's the greatest place to go to if you want to see our lovely faces. I'll say, your Spotify's. If you don't want to see our lovely faces and want to chill to us in the car, make sure you just jump onto one of those, hit the subscribe button, and if you're on YouTube, the notify button. That's the main one to make sure that we pop up in your feed.
Hit us up with any comments, any questions, like and subscribe, and hit that bell button, baby. Love it.
Indeed. Rivkins real quickly.
Yes.
Beware of investing in companies run by people who have failed in the past.
Yep.
I don't know if I agree with it. I like it. I don't like it. I think, especially in startup world, those that have failed, depends on the reason they failed, because there's a lot of stuff you learn the first time around that is very, very pertinent to if you wanted to have a go at another business the second time around. So if you failed due to, say, like a black swan event, 2020 or something like that, and maybe it was a bit of risk management or stuff like that you and you took on some learnings, then you're investable again. They usually say the second time round, actually, by VCs is the best time to invest into a founder. So there you go. But at the same time, be wary.
I like it from a way of you don't want to be with a track record of failures in terms of people that have multiple. And I agree with you. If you have the odd one here and there, that's life. That's part of the journey. I think you're going to have some forwards and backwards progress, or backwards, backwards deficit, forwards progress. The old one step backwards, 2 steps forwards, or 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But essentially, I think that's probably the one thing to be wary of. You generally want to try to surround yourself with people that have had a track record of success and more hits than misses. But you're not going to be able to have a 100% strike rate ratio. So probably. It's more the quote is probably just a little bit shallow in terms of definition of what failing means.
So Rivkin had a few fails. I'll just say the big thing you have to do is make sure you just look into, whenever you make an investment, whether it's public, private, whoever you're making it into, just dig a little bit deep into the people that are involved.
Yep.
Way too often do people just kind of blindly believe that someone else has already dug into it for them and they wouldn't be able to be where they are without someone having done that. And that's we've been shown over the last couple of years. I think we've been shown multiple examples of that. And the other one is just if you're putting your hard-earned money to work, just do a bit of due diligence. It doesn't take long.
Yep.
And you may find yourself not wanting to make that investment anymore. So yeah, budgets.
Take the extra time and the internet's an amazing thing nowadays where you can find out about people's background, track record, and also, I agree with you, do your due diligence, because you're generally investing is for the medium to long term. So taking a little bit of time to make sure that you get it right can reap dividends over that medium to long term time frame. So,
mate.
Budget summary, Brad. Where'd you see it? How'd you, and of course, as always, guys, general in nature, giving you a bit of an overview on the budget and what it means.
Our opinions doesn't mean our opinions are right or wrong.
Yep.
Look, I think it was but we're in times of inflation, so the government's taken a very safe route.
Yep.
I don't care about any commentary coming from the Libs on this because the Libs largely got us to where we are today.
Yep. Agree.
I'm apolitical, people. I don't follow left or right. I kind of follow smart policy, and
Great.
I think any Lib talking about any expenditure being inflationary and trying to get political points, just steer clear of all that stuff and just focus what's actually in the budget. So there's two ways they could have kind of gone down this budget path. One way was a safe route, which we'll talk about, which I think they have done, which is protect those people that are in vulnerable positions. And that's about it, in my opinion. And pretty light on across the board, not to kind of rock the boat in any way that could kind of impact inflation. And they've got a couple of policies outside the budget, that they've been trying to pass. I don't know if it's passed, like the Affordable Housing Act and the rest of it, which, depending on your viewpoint, will be they're either doing not enough or too much. But they've taken that safe route, or the other option was to actually look at, I guess, inflation as not just a tool for the Reserve Bank, and look at some policies that may have been able to alleviate, whether it's logistical supply, a lot of their business-related items for the budget was aimed towards kind of like the Build Back Australia manufacturing. I can't remember what the actual act is called. Joel, do you remember that act that was passed when Labor came back in around bringing back manufacturing to Australia?
Oh, make Australia great again. No, I don't.
Look, it was one of the acts. I'll bring it up while you're speaking. But a lot of the budget was rounded around, what the government does. They have their pinnacle piece that they kind of they talk about as they're coming in, and they kind of as a part of the election, they put themselves forward with. They then pass that legislation. They wait a year, and then they build a bit of a budget around it. So, look, they could have done a bit more. But before we go into the specifics, my overall high-level thing is I think they've just taken a very middle-of-the-road, safe budget and protected. Put in a couple of things there to protect those that probably are more vulnerable in society, being pensioners, low-income earners, single parents, etc.
Aged care workers.
And aged care workers, a 15% update is great. But these are all people that are in the lower income sector that should be probably a bump up with inflation and the rest of it, that are hurting during the times of inflation most. And I think that's typically what a Labor government probably is more seen as leaning towards, is the kind of trying to spread the wealth. So look, that's my 2 cents before we go to any specifics, Joel. But yours?
Yeah, I think targeted and careful in terms of the budget is probably my two take out words from this one. They didn't want to mimic old mates across the pond in the UK in terms of what the quickest serving Prime Minister ever was. I think it was maybe.
No, didn't want that.
Don't want to mimic that. If you do remember last year, I believe it was, I forget her name now, but she was definitely the fastest serving UK Prime Minister in history, and she tried to bring in. The issue with politics is when they try to bring politics into monetary decisions, it can go a bit haywire. And
Liz Truss, by the way.
Liz Truss, yeah, they weren't reading the room in terms of we've got rampant inflation that's only getting worse, and so let's call that a fire. And then they brought gasoline and any other flammable object to throw in the fire, and they expected people to like that. So yeah, there's that. The Australian government looks like they seem to have learned a bit from that and tried to steer clear of making those similar errors in judgment, we'll call it, at the time of potentially adding to hyperinflation. But so yeah, in terms of the notes we've got from the budget info. So and don't forget, people, a budget is only an announcement, so they'll require the legislation to get through government. So Labor have the majority in the House of Reps, but they don't hold a majority in the Senate. So then it might need to do some tinkering, negotiation, tweaking, whatever you may call it, get the final outcome, and it may differ, slightly in the announcements. From the announcement, so keep that in mind as well. The budget's in surplus, so I've got some good slides to talk to that. So I'll come back to the budget in surplus, but it's not. Funnily enough, we mentioned apolitical here. It's not because of any one party in particular, even though each party will tell you it was their doing, as budget and surplus, but it's more to do with the high commodity prices.
Arnold, basically, that's it.
Yeah, and
Let's be honest.
That's a temporary surplus for this year, which they sort of, they glossed over. They said, "Oh, surplus," but it sort of goes into deficit after that.
And we're talking about, sorry, Joel, but we're talking about what, $4 billion?
Yeah, but
and I think our national debt is what?
Oh, geez, is it up 500, maybe more?
National government debt in Australia is on the forward estimate is national debt has increased to $894 billion.
Yeah, it's
four.
Yeah, it's a lot of interest paid on that, especially with the interest going up recently, which is probably why they're having some arguments with the RBA. But anyway. Not a big unexpected budget is probably my overview as well. It's a higher focus on helping ease the cost of living measures, and then won't help all taxpayers or all Australians, but it'll target some, as we mentioned before. As Brad mentioned, helping the lower income earners, job seeker, family tax benefit increases, rental assistance for people that are on rental assistance, low interest. Interesting one, because I'm looking at solar at the moment, is there potentially. This is probably about forward planning and building out Australia. They're focusing on lower interest rate government loans for solar/renewables. So that could be interesting to where that gets to.
Right?
Pardon, sorry?
$1 billion for low cost loans for solar and double glazing and windows.
Yeah, so that's an interesting one. See where that goes to. And that's a short term thing, but also will kind of help in the future in terms of lowering bills down. 20K instant asset write-off for businesses less than 10 million when they're doing renewable energy type adjustments to the business premises. And then new eligible assets for energy efficient assets. So that's probably some of the high level stuff. The one thing we were chatting about off the podcast a couple of days ago with you, me and Arnie, Brad, was around I guess the summary of the budget was them trying to ease, because government can contribute and does contribute to inflationary measures. So when they're spending on infrastructure or giving tax breaks or putting money into the economy, that is essentially adding to inflation. So like speaking to Victoria, for example, there's a lot of infrastructure on the go, which is taking a lot of trades to the infrastructure builds, which then kind of pushes inflation because there's less trades to do other jobs. So that's an example of government adding to inflation through spend. So what they did in this one, which we're speaking about, is they tried to take away, or they reduced the energy costings by potentially supplying some rebates to people and trying to lower those costs to bring inflation down for this year. So try to lower their spend and decrease some costings, which will hopefully, what they're saying is they'll decrease inflation a touch this year and try to push it out for future years. So by, I guess what they're hoping is people have a lower power bill to pay, and they might not spend it all. They might save a bit of it. They might put it to good use in terms of other areas, which I think that's what they were trying to aim to achieve, is to maybe take some of those pressures off the energy bills and those higher costs, and then trying to reduce it down, Brad.
But we're talking about $500 up to $500 for energy rebates, right?
Yeah.
And that's only for eligible. So that eligibility takes that down. We're talking about single parents that have kids, which they'll usually transfer onto a new start at 8. They now can go to 14 years old, and that's another 176 a fortnight in their pocket. We're talking about $40 boost a fortnight for job seekers, $40, $40. We're talking about $31 a fortnight for renters when rent's gone up 17%. I don't know how deflationary or inflationary these things will be in nature. I know these have got lots of costs sitting around them. But if you're talking about a person that is currently struggling to pay electricity bill, and they're able just to pay that electricity bill now, because I don't know what your electricity bill is, Joel, but I can look at my electricity bill, and $500, and I only live in a 3-bedroom apartment with my wife. It's just 2 of us. And I look at the electricity bill and I'm thinking the average Australian family, $500 is going to help, but it's not going to go that far. So I'm not sure how much they think people are either going to save up and hope to lower inflation down the track, or spend in the economy. You know, for me, it's just kind of hope. For me, the stuff around increases to the ages of 8 to 14 for single parents, the welfare boost, the fortnight renter boost for eligible people. It's all about just like helping them make ends meet.
Yeah, it's getting through this period without adding to inflation. And I think if you multiply those energy savings across the board, and state by state, they're doing different things as well.
Yeah,
Victoria is doing another 250. So, they hope it adds to, I guess, helping people ease the burden there, and then maybe deflation or deflationary to an extent of energy inflation and costs there. But we'll see where it all comes up. I've got some screen grabs to share with you guys today as well. So if you're on the video version on YouTube, it'd be great to be able to see it. So this is just an overview of temporary surplus but remain. Difficult times remain. Budget with no real surprises. Focus on cost of living pressures and tax on high super balance. So that was some of the main things. This is the numbers I was talking about before. So we got 22-23 snapshot, 4.2 massive $billion budget.
I'm just looking at the future years. Kind of erases that $4 billion.
Yeah. So future years, which they sort of quickly glossed over. They do those campaign ads and they sort of talk really quickly. So they gloss that over pretty quickly. Real GDP, they're hoping also will come back down a touch, and CPI, they're hopeful here, which will be interesting to see whether 23-24, is that optimistic to get CPI down to 3.25? We'll soon find out.
Soon find out.
Yeah, unemployment, I don't reckon that's going to go up as much because we've got migration coming up and people seeking for jobs, and I don't know. I'll be surprised if it gets up there, but I might be proven wrong. And as we can see, so budget in deficit year after year, and then I think they were hoping they're starting to see it turn, maybe peak in 25, 26, and then start to turn back down again. But all these things will have moving parts and pieces as we go.
Depends what's happening in the world, eh? Depends on what's happening in the world. So much of that stuff, that's also like, the RBA hoping that unemployment gets back up to those levels, because traditionally that helps with inflation. And this is the whole central bank thing around the world that they're actually trying to. It's their job at the moment to kind of try and destroy jobs. In actual fact, they're just coming out and saying it blankly, and people are like, "What? That's so wrong." It's like, well, no, less people earning money equals less money going into the economy equals less inflation. It's just part of the parcel. They look at things at a macro level, not a micro level.
And we've said it before on the pod that the government doesn't actually want to see full employment. It's not good for the economy because there's too much tightening on the labour market and wage pressure. So they don't want wage pressure that high. So they actually want to have a bit of unemployment. So in terms of the changes to the tax rate.
Now, this one, Jolly, I would like to talk about this one for those listening. In here is that third stage, stage 3 personal income. And supposedly it is supposed to be coming in 1st of July, but they didn't actually announce anything as part of the budget, did they?
Well, because it's no change, they didn't need to, or they chose not to. So it's looking like for the people listening, you've got your current tax threshold, so it's up to 18,000 is nil tax, 18 to 45 is 19%, and then 45 to 120 is 32.5, 120 to 180 is 37, 180 and over is 45%. Every dollar you earn over the 180 mark, you're going to get taxed at 45 cents, or we'll call it almost half of every dollar. From stage 3 tax cuts from the 1st of July 24, they're proposing is that the first rate doesn't change. The second tier doesn't change either, but it's that third tier, which is the big change. So essentially, I guess they call it bracket creep, when you sort of creep through the brackets just purely from inflation, that you're pushing into higher tax rates. They're actually removing that and doing it, looks like a proposed flat 30% from 45K to 200. And then 200 and over is 45. So that's an interesting one. Brad, thoughts?
Look, I personally like it, and that's not just because benefit from it or friends benefit from it or whatever. I think it simplifies. We used to have too many stages. I think it simplifies things a lot. Those numbers can still change in the future, so I don't think that 30 number is going to be there. But I think having a taxable income across 40 to 200 brings us in line with a couple of other countries that are a little bit more simplified tax code. We pay taxes in all different ways and shapes and forms, from fuel exercises to GST to income taxes to all the rest of it.
Medicare levies.
And then you add all your levies and everything on top. And sometimes there was the flood levies, and then there was the
love a levy.
Love levies. And so I think simplifying it is great. you're talking about kind of, yes, it takes. There was a lot of hoo-ha about, okay, well, it's the people in stage 3. It's not the top people, so it's not those over $200,000 that are really benefiting. I mean, yeah, they're going to be benefiting from 7% less from 120 to 180, from 120 to 200, sorry, and 2.5% less between 45 and 120 on their tax. But I think I'm a big believer in, I guess, people are better at choosing their way to use their money than the government. And yeah, I'm a big believer in kind of overall lower taxes and smarter kind of policies. So that's where I am.
Love it. Good, mate. Good. Super considerations. So there's only a couple of things here. The big one is the tax on super in excess of 3 million balance, which is proposed, I think, for around 25-26 financial year and to implement 26-27. So it's still a bit of water to go under the bridge there. It'll be an interesting one because it's a big change. The big one, and like just a massive tax change, which I think still needs to be consulted on, is taxation of unrealised gains, which is just not a thing in Australia. You don't, if it's not realised, you can't tax it.
Well, I mean, that's for a reason, right?
Yeah. So they're proposing this.
You tax an unrealised gain, and then what? And then you sell it at a loss a couple of years later, and
there's no such thing like that. So and look, sometimes self-managed super funds, they have clunky assets like property or factories in there, and that might make up a large portion of the asset base inside of super. So they've got to get funds from somewhere for something that they hold in a tax-effective environment. So there's a bit to come under bridge there. So anything.
But the thing about this, Charles, we're even talking about property, which is generally seen as a more stable asset class in America at the moment. Commercial property is one of the huge red flags at the moment going in for banking.
Yeah.
Where you've had sales now, like obviously we talked about, I think, on the last pod, where the next tranche of a lot of commercial loans written about 5 years ago are coming up. And you've got properties in San Fran that were bought in 2018 for 300 million that are trying to sell for 60-70 million. So I mean, if you took an unrealized gain on that property during that 5-year period, and then now you're selling it for 70, I just don't know how it all will flush out. Anyway,
we'll see. Yeah, so it's 15% on the excess of above 3 million as per start.
Is that grandfather job? Is that going to be grandfathered in?
No, it's going to be brought in the 25-26 year with they do your balance check, and then the first implementation of that would be the following year, I believe.
So what happens if you do have over 3 million today? You can't take it out, but then you get start getting taxed on it. Like, I just don't know.
They possibly, and look, that's where your unrealised things comes in. But you'd hope you'd have liquidity in there to be able to fund some of the costs, or you'd have to fund it through super, or you'd have to fund it outside of super. So it's 15% above the normal tax rate, which is up to 15%. In pensions, 0, but a bit of water coming to the bridge on that one, so we'll wait and see. And it's an easy target for them because it doesn't impact a lot of people. It's a really small percentage. And
80,000 people in Australia, right?
Generally, people are going to say, well, hang on, well, it doesn't really matter to me. I don't have 3 million super. But the more they start mucking around with super, the more it will start to impact you in the future. So people have to start kicking back to say, stop messing around and fiddling around with super, because it's there to, and we've harped on about it before, it's there to help fund retirement, and it's there to help build up so that you don't rely on the government, you don't rely on the age pension in the future, you're relying on your own self. So if they keep on stuffing around with it, changing it, it's really hard to plan. So the government, unfortunately, both governments, they just plan short term, their 3.5, 4-year term, whereas super is really a 30, 40, 50-year proposition. Anyway, rant over. Payday arrangements, so super guarantee. So currently, if you're not sure, some employers or small to medium enterprise businesses, they pay quarterly or can pay quarterly or monthly. There's no sort of legislation to have to do a payday. A lot of the big corporations do a payday because they've got the ability to do so. But yeah, a lot of other people just do it with their BAS. I know we do. And so, super guarantee, I think that's still for a few years away for payday guarantee super adjustments. So
what does that mean, Joel? Like, small businesses are now going to be having to do it payday?
Yes, correct. So it's a bit of a bookkeeping change, So
I think it's a good thing. It protects the individual. I mean, too many businesses go under, and then that super that's gone. Money gone.
We see that quite regularly actually, where people my employer didn't pay me for years, and that's why my super is a bit lower. And now
little or no recourse as well. So I mean, it's just, don't like it.
And they've helped improve that a bit now because they use a super stream service through the ATO, so it has to go through the portal. So that sort of protected that side of things a bit. So that the money's getting paid
Yeah, the
through.
more the more they lock it up, the better, I reckon, for the
Yeah,
individuals.
and also
Yep.
they spoke about, like, I think they did some kind of modelling on someone on an average income and having that money go into their super regularly. It actually helps them from a financial perspective as
Think
well.
about compounding. Think
Yeah,
about, like,
compounding.
if
Yeah,
you don't get that paid, sometimes a couple of
yeah,
quarters behind, you've just missed out on
yeah.
that money.
Compounding
Yeah,
returns. Yeah, so
yeah.
it's a little bits and pieces add up. Other changes we spoke about, so increased welfare payments for below age pension age, so your
Yep.
JobKeeper recipients, incentives for pensioners to continue to keep working. So I think they've already done the work bonus test. I think they've talked about maybe continuing that. Parenting payments for single parents to improve there for single parents, which is great, and fairer wages for aged care workers, which is definitely overdue. So not limit, yeah. So not announced. So there, yeah, no extension for low to medium income tax offsets. No unwinding of stage 3 personal tax changes. So that was like not announced. Anything else exciting? Income stream payments, which is sort of in our field, as they've
Everything
no
else is pretty
extension of
straightforward, right?
minimum. Yeah, nothing else too exciting there. So that's pretty much a bit of a screen share summary for you guys and an overview on the budget. So let us know what you think, guys. If there's any questions you got, anything that you want to know about or interested in, then or how it impacts you, we're keen to hear. So yeah, any last closing comments on the budget, Brad?
Indeed. A couple more things to add, be jolly.
Go for it.
Being from Startup World, I thought I'd just throw in, I guess, what people in my land care about. Had a couple of companies ask me yesterday if I'd heard anything, what was happening with the accelerating commercialization grant. That's a grant that Hammertech, about 10 to 15 companies a year get it. Probably about 1,000 apply. It's around accelerating the commercialization of ideas in Australia across, robotics, AI, technology, kind of the fields that the government wants to build an economy of scale around that are probably the biggest drivers of new jobs at the moment. Advanced manufacturing, there's a couple of categories there. The way it works is you go through a pretty laborious application path where you're proving out, your idea, your go-to-market strategies, risks, IP strategies. You've got to get. It's got to be. You can't get VC funding, so this is a way of, if you can get VC funding, then you can't get the accelerated commercialization. It's there. It's really like a backstop to help ideas that don't necessarily fit into where VCs are at the moment. And you got to match it dollar for dollar. So Hammertech got about $680,000, and it's equity free, and it's money. It's good money. You got to match it dollar for dollar as well, and that really, really helped us. I mean, we got it when we were about 25 people big, and we're upwards of 100 jobs now in Australia. So that's one of those things that does work. And its funding envelope finished on the 9th of May. And so it actually closed. And this happens every new government. They come in, they let it run out for that year that they come into government, and then they rebrand it and reshape it to fit into kind of their priorities. So the act that I forgot to was before was the National Reconstruction Fund, which was Labor's kind of principal overarching reason for coming in, and they're spending about $30 billion across kind of medical science, renewables, defense capability, bringing manufacturing back in on board, and the rest of it. So it's still going to be called the Accelerated Commercialization Fund. They put $392 million over 5 years, and it's just a rebranding exercise. All the feedback that I've kind of read into on this one seems that it's just a rebranding exercise, and the government's not really actually investing that much more money into this area, which is a bit of a shame, since it's been a big area of growth. There's been a number of ideas that have actually taken off, both here domestically and overseas. Australia is kind of competitive on the overseas landscape. Obviously, America's the biggest, followed probably by Israel, then Europe, and then probably here. Southeast Asia, Australia's kind of no more the startup world than Singapore and the rest of it. And it's a bit of a shame that the government's not, I would say, pursuing that, because I think, as we all probably know, technology and science is going to be a big part of the future, not just in careers, but in solving a lot of problems. But that's my own bias. The the government is putting $101 million over 5 years earmarked for quantum computing and AI. Not really sure. There's not much details around it, but it looks like they're putting that into helping businesses integrate basically AI and quantum computing into Australian business to make them more efficient. Again, not really sure what that means. Not sure what the parameters around it. $101 million isn't that much money. It sounds like a lot of money, but take this, it's less than 1% of what Microsoft is invested into OpenAI. So it's a government, if they're that serious about it, kind of sounds like we want to do something around AI and quantum computing, and here's just a little bit of money to kind of create a department to do something with. And they haven't recommenced the EMDG, which is actually the export development grant, which is really interesting. So that's supporting Australian products today by providing a 1-for-1 cash incentive to match kind of marketing and sales dollars overseas to try and push products.
Yeah, push export services and products.
Correct. And that's really interesting that they've kind of let that one drop. Again, helped us out. I know it's helped out a bunch of other startups and businesses get their product overseas. It's not cheap, everybody. And at the same time, I mean, we've launched in now North America. We've probably hired another 30 engineers here in Australia to support that. Just launched in the UK. And these are they're not huge. I think the EMDG is up to 50,000, but it helps.
Well, it helps you guys, it helps other startup businesses in that space by giving the leg up to allow them to do that and expand. And then the government is expecting to reap benefits in the medium long term because they'll get that back in tax dollars.
Income taxes and all the rest of it, and profit taxes and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
So,
which they did mention in the budget actually around where was it? It was to do with increased anti-tax avoidance income flowing offshore, missing out on tax revenue. So they are aware. They're trying to make sure that they minimise the big companies, big corps, pushing funds and flowing income and adjusting the books to so they don't miss out on those tax dollars because they're very important.
They're very important. Yeah. So look, that's in the startup space. I've sent these articles around to a couple of people, and I think for those that are waiting for the new application dates, I think once this budget passes and all the rest of it, you'll probably see about 4 to 6 months from now accelerating commercialization page back up on open status instead of closed status, and people can start applying again. That accelerating commercialization one is just a really, really kind of backbone part of the startup kind of community here in Australia, and it's good to see that it's at least funded again.
Love it, mate. Thanks. Great for the update, because those things aren't necessarily the headline grabbing stuff, but it's just that nitty gritty information. So it's good to know for the listeners out there. Very, very interesting. But yeah, that sort of wraps up our budget special today. And now we want to kick on to the most important part of the show, which is the 50-50. What's your choice? Either or. Part of the show where we talk about choosing things not from a financial perspective, but it's based off that loosely.
Is yours holiday related, Joel?
It is a self-interest, the topic today, Brad. Self-interest. So it's definitely a self-interested 50-50 choice for myself today, self-chosen. So I'm looking forward to giving you that one and getting your feedback. Brad, if you were to go to Singapore, for example, hypothetically, go to Singapore, and I was to give you either $400 that you had to spend all in one night, no change, on fine dining, or I was going to give you $200 and you could spend on any hawker food and you can have multiple meals. What would you take? No change out of each.
Hawker every day of the week. Because I mean, fine dining you can do anywhere, and like Singapore does have some great fine dining places.
So you're giving up the 400? You're giving up?
I'll give up the 400 because I think the value you get. Look, Singapore can be a cheap place, but can be an expensive place, right? And my thesis behind this is I can get a good meal here in Australia. At the high end, they'll probably beat Singapore. Whereas at the lower end, there's nothing in Australia like hawker centres. And being able to that $200 for you, 2 kids and missus, I mean, you're over there for 4 days. That $200 will get you your lunches and a couple of other snacks every single day, Joel. So
so $200.
And I'm talking about like amazing
$200 for you, Brad. If you were over there by yourself and $200 US, or are we talking AUD or US?
No, I'm talking 200 Sing or 200 AUD here.
200 AUD. How far could you stretch that for yourself if you were to do hawker, breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Yeah.
SGD, 20 days.
Huh?
I can stretch that for 20. I can stretch it. If I'm eating lunch and dinner, I'll stretch it for a good 15 days.
$200.
200 SGD, yeah. So 200 Sing.
What are the meals costing?
I mean, you're paying anywhere between kind of like $4 to $7.50.
Wow. There you go. All right. Well,
and we're talking about top tier hawker food there. We're not talking about low tier hawker food. We're talking about,
I don't even have to give my 50-50 today because it's just a self-interested topic. So there you go. I've got my spending plan for Singapore for food. Can't wait.
Mate, a couple of quick ones for the anyone go to Singapore, Joel. So Hong Lim Market is my favorite. Hong Lim, like Hong Kong, but just Hong Lim Market. They've got some amazing char kway teow there and some pork noodles and other stuff. And a little bit of
Michelin hat in there, isn't there?
Michelin, not a Hong Lim. No. The Michelin, that's the chicken rice.
Thai Wok Pong Kong or something like that. I think I read the name.
Oh, that's the Taiwan pork noodle. Yes,
yeah, that's the one.
Yes. The Michelin stars are chicken rice ones. Maxwell Food Centre is also. So Tian Tian is the one that's Michelin starred. It's the one Michelin starred Tian Tian, A&A chicken rice. That is what you want, and that's at the Maxwell Food Centre. So there's there's other obviously food centres around that I would recommend, but if I was only able to get to two, I'll go to those two, and then if there was a third, Tiong Bahru, but I'll just focus on those two. Maxwell, Hong Lim, rock solid. You've got about, I'm going to say, 120 to 160 little restaurants inside there, hawker restaurants.
An old mate lost his Michelin star. The guy got capped it years ago, and he tried to sort of expand out and he's one in Melbourne, but it's just not that good.
It's good chicken rice still.
Yeah, Melbourne I've been to, it's never been exciting. Like
not here in Melbourne. So
I think they've lost the quality control. Anyway,
you can't. It's funny. My wife, for all those online, she's Malaysian Chinese, and so she's from Malaysia, but East Malaysia, so Borneo, Malaysia, from an area called Sarawak, and best food in Asia. Sarawak, my favorite, hands down. But I always say, like, why can't I replicate the food here that's there? It's produce. Yeah. It's like sometimes, less nutrition. Sometimes, like smaller chickens. Sometimes you just can't. Australian food standards as well. Like you just can't. It just doesn't mix.
And you hear about like In-N-Out Burger. The reason they haven't come out or they can't come out is because their produce is they do a certain methodology. It's East Coast based, it's fresh or whatever it is, West Coast based, and they can get stuff they need quickly and logistically. So it's really hard to mimic what you're doing overseas.
Correct. And they care more about not stuffing with what's worked than money, which is great. I like it. With Tian Tian tried to, I think his son, I think it wasn't him, I think it was his sons that tried to capitalise on the old money and cash money. But Jolly, enjoy Singapore and Thailand, mate.
Thanks,
and hopefully
guys,
we can see you in Thailand and Singapore, mate.
Absolutely.
18th Thailand and 20. Well, actually, you're back 24th. There you go.
Can't wait. Yeah. So we're not counting down though. We're counting up to going. But listeners, check in. Give us any questions you like, any topics you want discussed, and hit us up any of the channels, YouTube, comments, Facebooks, all those good things. I'm doing Arnie's job today, which is just not as good a job as Arnie. We want to hear from you guys, and we love chatting to you. And we'll, as I've said multiple times, we've got some good guests lined up, so we're going to get those on for you guys when we're back on deck. All right, cool.
Done. All right, mate.
I'm out.
See you guys.
See you.
Bye.